Okay.
All right.
All right. Okay. Well, we are happy to welcome Shannon McNerney, the director of Fishtrap today. And one of the reasons I wanted to have her on and have other people in the nonprofit sector is to tell for all of us to be able to talk to a wider audience about how we're trying to cope with the current situation. So, and for Shannon, with their big summer event coming up, it's probably been even more difficult than it has for other nonprofits in the community who have programs spread out over more time. You have other programs too, but you have that big one. You had to have that big one. Go ahead, Shannon.
Well, and Rich, I'm hoping this is kind of a conversation too. So please, anybody, let's jump in and ask questions. But first off, Fishtrap's here. We're still fine. I think like a lot of nonprofits, and I know Josephy Center being one of them, especially in early March, this was pretty scary. We weren't sure what was going to happen. We knew that eliminating or canceling Summer Fishtrap was a possibility at that point. And we almost immediately started talking about, well, what else could we do? The financial reality of Summer Fishtrap, as I know you know very well, Rich, is that's, by far our largest program of the year. And it helps pay for other things we do. So when we actually did go into lockdown in mid-March, we had about 50 people that had pre-registered for Summer Fishtrap, plus about another 25 who had registered for our 2 outpost programs. So, losing that income would have been, if we'd had to refund everything, would have been, if not fatal, pretty close to Fishtrap this year. So what we did right away was start talking to, I know we talked to you, we talked to people in the community, we talked to our faculty and said, well, what other possibilities could we have? And one of the thoughts was coming up with a way to do a virtual Summer Fishtrap event. And we were, Mike had reached out to this year's faculty who have been incredibly supportive and said, here are the things we're thinking about. At that point we thought, well, maybe we move it to the fall, or we do, we just cancel it this year and do it next year. Or we were looking at all sorts of things. And as we were in the middle of this, Eastern Oregon University and David Axelrod reached out to us and said, hey, you guys want to go virtual, we'll jump in with you. We'll help you do it. Last year, I think a lot of you know this, Eastern Oregon University relaunched their creative arts or creative writing MFA program, which is a low residency program, and Summer Fishtrap is a low residency, so we're a partner with them. And they were certainly interested in making sure that we were still able to provide that content for their students. So that was kind of where we started. And Mike Midlow, our program manager, and Janice Carper and Whitney since then have been working really hard with the EOU staff to try to recreate as much as possible the Summer Fishtrap experience as close as you can with these screens, but trying to continue to offer this week-long writing workshop with each of our faculty, and then also providing extra content, some of the things that other people have come to expect, including the evening faculty readings. Craig Child's keynote is starting, and seeing what we can do to make some of the events, or as many of them as we would normally do, free and open to the public as we go forward. So it's been an interesting exercise in taking an event that's, one of its big appeals is coming and spending a week at the lake, and making sure that we provide as much of that experience as possible to the people that have decided to stick this out with us. So we still have 50 registrants or close to signed up for Summer Fishtrap this year. Not all of them are the same people. We've actually picked up some new folks, and we had several that, God bless them, decided that they were going to told us, hang on to your registration income, we'll come next year, which has been a really nice thing. So we have 2 less workshops than we were planning on. We decided not to offer the youngest kid workshop, which is the Story Lab digital storytelling workshop, because we were worried about screen fatigue, and having 10 to 13-year-olds sit in their house with iPads in the summertime didn't seem like a positive thing for them. But Mosley Wada's high school poetry workshop is still happening. And we still have some scholarship students that are taking that, including, I think, somebody's granddaughter, if I remember. And then we have 7 of our 8 adult workshops are happening. One of our faculty, Tim Hernandez, had to back out unexpectedly, actually, this last week. But we have the rest of the workshops, including Craig Childs and Frank X. Walker and Ellen Waterston and all the rest that are still there. And we're still taking registrations. So the nice thing is this year you don't have to book travel and you don't have to worry about trying to find a place to stay. So, but that's kind of in a nutshell, that's what we're doing.
So in those, when somebody signs up for a Fishtrap workshop, are they really going to be in this screen room for 3 hours for a 3-hour session?
In some cases, we're leaving that up to the faculty largely. There will be 3 hours of writing instruction available. And
Okay.
fortunately, most of our faculty have, they either working currently in academia or they all have lots of experience teaching. So they are, breaking that up in some cases with multimedia presentations. There'll be lots of chances. Nobody's going to be sitting and staring at a screen for 3 hours straight, I don't think. But that's going to be something that each of the workshops do individually. But there will be, those 3 hours of instructional time daily for 5 days.
Okay. And the evening readings, you'll do it the same way? People will be able to live stream them?
We're going to do a comment. Actually, we were just talking about that today. Some of them are going to be live streamed. Some of them will be pre-recorded. We're going to play with the time a little bit because we are dealing with different time zones in a way that we haven't had to worry about before. We have some people that that are coming from different parts of, Walker is a good example. He's going to be, in Kentucky when he's teaching. So doing a 7 o'clock reading or a 7:30 reading didn't seem fair. So what we'll be doing is probably daily posting a schedule of what's going to be available that day and providing access to people that they can do that at any point during the day. And there will be some live events. We're still working out which is going to be what. And we'll be using a combination of different technologies. So EOU has a platform called Canvas, which for anybody who's taken a online class through university is probably familiar with. And that's where most of our registrants will be, or all of our registrants will be going to take the workshops and attending craft talks and things there. And then for the rest of the public, anybody who wants to join in for an evening reading, will be using Vimeo for that. And those will still be available and free. And we'll also have those up on the website, I think, at some point. So yes, we'll make sure if you want to be there, you get to be there for sure. So, and then we've also been talking with Katie Madrid and Becky Weiland, who have just bought the Book Loft, I think most people know. And there will be a bookstore available with links to buying books. And there may even be some that are signed, so stay tuned, but there'll be all sorts of opportunities. We're trying to cherry pick the best of what we do. Whitney, God bless Whitney Chandler, our youth program manager, even took borrowed a GoPro from Winding Waters River Expeditions and ran around the lake and took videos so that we can provide, a little respite for people who've registered. There'll be a room for them to go check out Wallowa County, go spend some time at the lake and get some inspiration. There'll be some pictures. We're looking at the possibility of featuring some local musicians so that we're able to highlight as much of the county as we can.
Oh, good.
Yeah. We're learning a lot, I will say that. And I think that it will impact, what we do with Summer Fishtrap going forward. I think it's going to give us some ways to deliver some content to people who maybe traveling here is prohibitive, and it's going to make that, I think, give us some new tools to use, which in the long term could be really good.
So how many people are involved in that dual program with the MFA at Eastern and Fishtrap?
They just started their second cohort this year, so there's 17 total students right now between the two. Yeah.
Shannon?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, who is in charge of that program now at EOU?
David Axelrod.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. There's a link on our website if anybody's interested in learning more about that program. And one of the things that they put in place last year is if you're interested in applying for that MFA program, they're willing to take look at if you've attended Summer Fishtrap in the past and taken a week-long writing workshop, they'll apply some of that as credit towards your MFA, which is pretty spectacular. So
Yeah, yeah. And is their program 2 years with, and without this, it's 2 years with, they, do the students come to Fishtrap twice?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
And that's included as part of the tuition. So they can pick whatever workshop they want. And I think last year what they did is it was a 2-week residency. So it was a week at Summer Fishtrap and then a week on campus. I'm not completely sure what they're doing this year, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Is that Deb again? You have another question, Deb?
No, I don't.
Okay. So Shannon, so the summer program, oh, I was going to ask something else about the Eastern connection there. Anyway, so the Eastern connection and the MFA. Do you have? Do they have responsibilities at Fishtrap too? Weren't they? Didn't you have some of those people actually working for you or coming up during the year and doing some work as well?
Not, that's something that we're working on going forward. They, it's still a pretty new relationship on this level. We had talked about this summer, had it been live, that they would maybe do a craft talk or present something with their writers. The final schedule as it's being developed, as it's being worked on right now, there's the good thing about this is we have a little more time,
Yeah.
we're still working on. There may be still something that they do there, but they've also expressed interest and have done some things like David himself has taught. He taught a writing workshop last year. He brought their literary magazine. They did a reading from the Fishtrap House last year, have expressed some interest in being involved with Winter Fishtrap. So I think over the next, certainly the next few years, you're going to see more of that.
Okay.
This kind of is, and I'm sure it's happened with the Josephy Center, a lot of our plans have changed. The implementation of things has changed. And obviously EOU, their students are studying virtually as well. So some of the student access that we had talked about is not necessarily happening this year, but hopefully over the next year that will happen.
Did you have, you did teach this year the college writing class for high school students, right?
We did,
So
yeah, that's with EOU as well, yeah.
So you had to do that virtually then too. That had to
be no, we didn't actually. Amy Zan taught that class, and interestingly enough, the very last day of the class was March 13th.
Oh,
yeah. So we had planned on doing a Fishtrap college reading that night, and the guidelines had just come out about not doing readings in enclosed spaces. So we that was actually the very last thing we did at the Fishtrap House before we shut it down. So but those kids just squeezed through, so yeah.
good. Is there a question there? Nope. So what other programs, Shannon, are being impacted by this what are we missing right now from Fishtrap that we would be getting?
The big one right now, Outpost would be the Outpost on the Zoom Walt would have taken off in a couple weeks with Kim Stafford. And that has been postponed to 2021. The Outpost on the Snake in September is also just as of 2 weeks ago has just been canceled. And that was with Craig and Winding Waters River Expeditions, and that's being postponed till next year. Particularly in June, we would have been gearing up for Summer Fishtrap. So we had to cancel the last fireside of the season. and actually turn that into a virtual event, which you can still see online if you want to catch that. That was our first Zoom Live event that we did. And I think there was a writing workshop that we ended up, a local writing workshop that we ended up canceling, although we have offered 2 virtual writing workshops, and had, which was really interesting, our local writing workshops that we do during the year, we were able to convert 2 of them into virtual experiences, and we had people all over the country that joined in, which was great. So that's something that you can probably see us do more in the future. Probably the biggest impact to our program locally was, Whitney's work with the kids in the schools. Obviously that stopped. She was able to do some special projects with a couple of classrooms. She did a haiku workshop with one classroom and did, I think, another work with a high school, did some stuff with Camp Scott in Wallowa. But, all of the plans we had for the spring for our writers in the schools went away. So that was the biggest impact. And then going forward, we're just not sure. We're doing a lot of discussion at this point. The Fishtrap House is closed to the public and will probably stay that way for the time being. The space is just too small to do social distancing events. It's just not something we can do. So we're talking about, what does Fireside look like in the fall? Are we going to do it? If we do, what does it look like? What happens with the big read? So we're planning on going ahead with our programming. We're just looking at, either totally going virtual or doing a combination of virtual and in-person events on a smaller scale. So stay tuned. Until we know what happens in the projection of the virus,
What about the year-long workshops? So you got people in the middle of that, right?
We do. We actually have one finishing with Laura Pritchett and another one starting with Nina, and those haven't been impacted. Laura had been using, I think, a combination of this technology during the year with her students already, so they're just going to keep going. It's unfortunate for them that they weren't able to come back to the lake for a week, but they're still moving forward. And we have, I think we lost one registrant and then gained one back. So Nina McConaughey's YearLong is going ahead as planned. So that's a good thing. And I think we had 22 or 23 total Outpost people who had registered, and all but 3 of them have decided they're going to stick it out and wait till next year, which is tremendous. Really grateful for that.
Well, good.
Yeah.
Any other questions out there? Come on now.
I'm curious if spring or summer ever arrives here. Is there any possibility of outdoors socially spaced events?
Probably not in June and July, just because we've got our hands full, which we would normally. I'm sure Rich can back this up. When we get through a Summer Fishtrap, even though it's virtual, we're kind of brain dead for a little bit. But August, September, possibly. We're still kind of looking at, what people want. That's going to be something we're going to need to find out. Is what we do know that when times are tough and there's so much going on, that writing is important and it's an outlet for people. And, what kind of content would you like? What would that look like? So if you have ideas, please give us a call. Well, don't call us because we aren't there, but feel free to send us an email. Yeah.
Well, what about writing about this, what we're going through right now? Is there anything that addresses that specifically? Not
programmatically, but that's something we certainly could be looking into. Yeah, we kind of went into lockdown, how do we get this done modes, but we're going to start opening that up. So yeah, that's a good thought. We've talked about the possibility of doing some virtual writing groups. There's all sorts of options on the plate, but we're reinventing things. So your suggestions and telling us what you want is part of that, huge part of that.
Yeah. There, of course, the writing outlets are myriad out there right now. And so has anybody seen this thing called LitHub?
Mm-hmm.
And LitHub, they bring in writings from everywhere, from magazines you've never heard of and whatnot. But a lot of people are addressing what's happening, both what's happening with the pandemic and what's happening with the demonstrations. and what's happening with, I think the world is in many ways topsy-turvy. I mean, we're talking about things that they're even getting legislation on the floor that nobody even thought about a year ago, or thought that they could do, you know. So I think there's some, along with the cramping all of our styles, there must be some opportunities out there to corral and to help people express themselves and find ways to express themselves and places to express themselves.
We have been posting, started doing it almost immediately. A lot of our Summer Fishtrap faculty, current and past, had sent us some little video links with writing prompts that we were posting for a while. I think we've gone through almost all of those. We do share things as we get them. Whitney has been posting some things on our Story Lab page, and the ones that are great for adults, we've been sharing there as well. And then we actually just recently, with Whitney and Elizabeth Oliver, helped corral. We have a list on the fishtrap.org website of resources for students and teachers, and it was primarily aimed at youth, so students and teachers and parents, that are creative writing resources for them. We also just recently posted on that page a list of resources dealing with the issues that are coming up with racism and Black Lives Matter. So there's a list of links there that we've made available, and we're going to continue to do that, you know, where people can go, including links to, you know, other arts nonprofits and other organizations, including the Josephy Center. It's, you know, if you're looking for an outlet, you know, make sure that people know that's a place you can go to find some ideas and some resources. So, and we're going to continue to do that as we go forward. So. And again, I mean, I'd encourage anybody, if you have an idea or suggestion, you know, our programs are here to promote good writing and clear thinking for everybody here. And one of the things we've been talking about lately is we know that what people may need, what our local community needs, and what resources they have available are changing. And we want to hear from you, so we're creating the right programs for you. So please let us know.
Do you have your big read book for next year?
We do. Gosh, I'm going to forget the name. We get to, pardon? Elizabeth, you're there. Can you remember?
I'm there, right. In the Heart of the Sea, the true story of the whale ship Essex, which is the first nonfiction selection that we've made. And the cool thing is that there's a young adult version of that too, for 5th through 7th, 8th graders. And I'm sitting here looking at the books that I'm going to deliver to the teachers this afternoon, so that they can read them over the summer and decide if they want to put them into their curriculum, or because we don't know what next year is going to look like school-wise. And I was also wondering if that meant, you know, decision, I know not before Summer Fishtrap, but about Fishtrap College, if that's maybe will come about virtually, or
yeah, we really don't know on Fishtrap College yet. Our plan is to still offer it, but you know, again, my goal in the next, you know, wanted to let administrators get through. They've been dealing with this in a way that we can only imagine. So, you know, let them get through what they need to do, and then we'll be circling back with the administration at Willow and Joseph and Enterprise Schools to find out what they need and what their students need, and then talking to EOU, and obviously to Amy Zam, who has been teaching the class really well, very well done in the last couple of years, and finding out what we can do there. So a lot of this is kind of stay tuned. The big read is still scheduled to launch in mid-February. As far as what events are happening, we just won't know till we know what we can do publicly or not. But you know, we have some news that's a little bit embargoed, but you know, our plan is to go forward with the event, and we've got lots of support to make that happen. So. Now,
is that Melville's boat?
Yeah.
No, this is written by Nathaniel Philbrick, but
oh no, yeah, not written by him, but is that the boat that
Melville based it on? Yes.
That Moby Dick was based
right,
on?
Moby Dick was based on this story.
Yeah.
from interviews with survivors.
Oh, it's got all sorts of fun in it. You know, you've got adventure and cannibalism and whales, and you know, so we're planning an interesting meal event that, you know.
I couldn't put it down. I mean, it's not usually the kind of book that I read, but it was a page turner for me.
So, Elizabeth and Shannon and other people, there are books out there. I mean, we're doing this rapid shift now in our society. And in a family Zoom meeting, my sister majored in criminal justice and she retired from the California Justice Department. So we've had interesting conversations, family conversations, about what defunding police means, about what, you know, about racial relations and on police forces, and I was, before this, I was listening to Floyd's funeral from Houston. I think there's some incredible things going on, and there is a literature out there on racial relations, on protest, on, I kept thinking back to the 60s. That's what the music this morning reminded me of. I was in, yeah. How do we address that? How do we, I mean, we had a march here. Elizabeth, you were there. We had, not a march, but a demonstration. We had a couple hundred people in Enterprise. We don't have a Black population here. There were a couple of American Indians there, 3 that I know of. And of course, we had people across the street with their guns and stuff. And we had our sheriff walking through us. But anyway, these are events. These are things that our young people are dealing with. Mm-hmm. What do kids do when they have to go to college virtually? And they're, how can we deal with these things as nonprofits? Not just Fishtrap, but Josephy Center, Fishtrap, mm-hmm. any organization that's trying to do work for the public, you know?
I think we have to start by listening.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, I do. I think we have to start by listening. You know, one of the things that, you know, maybe we should consider at some point is doing that is, you know, maybe coming up with a way to host a listening session that, you know, that is targeted particularly to these amazing younger community members who really were the ones that spearheaded that event, you know, that demonstration, and have been the most vocal online. And listen to them about what kind of, you know, ways we can support them. Even more importantly, listening to the people of color that are in our community or attached to it, and find out what they need from us. Specifically, I think art is a huge part of that. You know, art and creativity is a big part of it. I think we're all kind of scrambling a little bit to, you know, both in our own individual organizational structures, but also personally, to figure out, well, what's my role in this and what's appropriate. And I think where Fishtrap has started with is, you know, what we've talked about is the first thing we need to do is get informed, you know, which is why, you know, we're looking at, and that list will grow about, you know, what resources are available, written by particularly African Americans, but people of color, that are not, that are listening to their voices. How do we find out what we need and not burden our, it's been one of the biggest lessons I've learned through all this is it's not our people of color in our community's job to tell us how to do better. We need to listen to each other. We need to learn. We need to get educated. We were, you know, I look at my own life and upbringing and realize I had a conversation with somebody the other day about, you know, an issue dealing with a white supremacist group in the area. And I made a comment about, I didn't know that was there. And this friend of mine who's a person of color said, well, you don't need to know. And that was a good kind of, yeah, you're right. I live in a privileged world where I have the ability to overlook that and not pay attention to it. And I think the blinds are being ripped off as we speak, and that ability is gone. So I think it needs to start with us listening. And then I think going forward, you know, whether it's, you know, start, you know, from our arts centric point of view, talking with, you know, the Josephy Center and Fishtrap and the Music Alliance getting together and saying, well, what can we do? What can we offer? What do we do really well that can help? And I think we can't do that in a vacuum. We need to ask our community what they need, and be helpers. Look for the helpers, as Fred Rogers said. It's our job to be helpers. So, see what we can do there to create that space. Create space for people to be creative, create space for, we're even thinking about, as we look at what Winter Fishtrap is going to be this year, we're just starting to have those conversations about realizing that it likely won't be an in-person event. So can we work with Oregon Humanities and other organizations in our region who are really good at addressing some of these issues and saying, well, let's build an event that's about this. It's about conversation. So I think the other piece of it is challenging our people in the community to help us do that. Tell us what you need, instead of us just creating things. So talking to our partners, Eastern Oregon University and Art Center East, and obviously Maxwell Heritage and some of the Nez Perce Homeland Project, and we have all these amazing resources here. Let's use them and see what we can do together.
And
Oregon Humanities hosted a Eastern Oregon conversation about a month and a half ago, and that was on COVID, but I'm sure that they're probably going to go forward with those the conversations about what's happening now. So they are a good partner for Fishtrap in this area.
They've been a good partner. Mike and I have had some conversations with Adam Davis already, who's their executive director and a good guy, and they're really supportive of Fishtrap. So yeah, we're looking forward to that. We've also been in contact with other literary arts organizations, in particular, Literary Arts in Portland, and have some regular conversations there. And what I'm sensing is, and I don't know if you're seeing this too, Rich, but just a real sense that people want to work together. A lot of this, my audience, my program stuff has gone away. And, I think the need for us to come together and see what we can do to address these bigger concerns is going to be more important as we go forward, But I still keep going back to, we need to ask the people who are most impacted by this what they need from us instead of the other way around. Here's what we can do for you. I think we need to go the other way first. So.
Well, I like your idea of reaching out to the people who did help organize the event here last Friday. I think that's a great idea.
I'd love to do a listening session. Maybe that's something we can put together. Is how can we help you?
That too.
Yeah.
I like that you're recording this because people usually don't print out emails, whereas people used to save snail mail.
Mm-hmm.
And it occurs to me, as you're having conversations, it's a kind of oral history if any of that could get recorded.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a
I
good
was
idea.
going to say, the Josephy Center, we do have a little book group, and we've been picking some really good books that have Native American topics. And we've also talked about reading books that really kind of talk about racial divide and race. So I'd love Fishtrap to help us work on that. Right now, what is the name of our next book?
Well, right now we're reading Louise Erdrich's new novel, The Night Watchman,
Mm-hmm.
which is a fictionalized version which brings you up to date on what happened to American Indians in the 1950s in America with termination. And it's just, but at any rate, and Cheryl suggested yesterday that we read, White Privilege. What's it called, Cheryl?
White Fragility.
White Fragility. And I know that a lot of workshops, a lot of people have been talking about that book, and I've been in workshops where it's been mentioned, and I think it might be a good idea for us all to read it. So one possibility.
And I just participated in a NEOEDD training that was about basically how to deal with racism, or what can we do to make things better in a short little steps. And this is one way, just educating ourselves and just talking. there's so much people are afraid to talk about. And I think the more we read and the more we talk about things, the more open people are going to be about it. So, yeah. And I'm totally on the same page with you, Shannon, about what we were talking about. Just, but I do think that there's going to need to be more conversation and more, really taking a look at what white privilege is and what we're doing, how we can really make some changes.
There's a couple of on the Fishtrap site we posted on our Facebook page. It was a list that was put together by a couple of strong young Black women. That is a list of resources for white people, and that book is listed on it. Ijema, I think it's Ijema Luo, so you want to talk about race, which is a great one I've read.
Yeah.
Ibrahim Zendi has another one that deals with that. That's a good one. There's also a podcast that I really, really highly recommend called Being White. That, along with the 1619 project that the New York Times did, has a lot of just really good historical context and information that just we were not taught.
Right.
And I think, everything from, what's become just things from redlining and Reconstruction and post-Reconstruction issues and, the Tulsa massacre and all of these things, but also just the systemic things that have gone on. And Being White also does, Rich, I don't know if you're a podcast guy, but it also touches on some of the issues around. There's one whole issue, one whole episode that's just about, the hanging in Minnesota. And what some of the healing and not healing that's gone on in the 100 and some years since then. So really, really powerful resource for people that want to dig in. So I think, anything we can do to help encourage those conversations, that's going to be really important.
I
think that, a lot of these trainings that nonprofits are going through, I was really surprised. My brother works at the Library of Congress, and he had never even heard of DEI training.
Wow.
So it's amazing how a lot of the foundations that we work with and that we are in rural areas really trying to revolve around the idea of DEI. And I'm sorry, we're totally going off topic, but, but that, the police departments are not going through this. Or if they are, they're not listening. So how are we going to get these people to listen and kind of see a different way of looking at things when they pull somebody over? Just really interesting subjects to talk about.
I don't think there's a way currently, living in the times that we live in. I was telling folks the other day that I heard a quote about, those things you read about in textbooks, history textbooks when you were in school. We're living in one of those times now. And I think anything we do to kind of address we off topic, anything we're doing right now, our whole reality has just shifted. So anything we do with programs, anything we do with the exhibits we do or the activities we hold is going to be flavored by the times we are in. And if we ignore it, whether it's, the impact on our communities and access to healthcare, or, what happens to people that are dealing with isolation and making sure that they're staying connected. And this huge, huge, huge piece of, what's going on with the Black Lives Matter movement. And, it's a great awakening in some ways, but for us to keep going on like it's not happening, to me, it's not possible. I just don't think it's possible. And if we do that, then we're not serving our mission. We're not doing what we said we're supposed to do. So
I think this doesn't just go with race. It goes with religion. It goes with people with disabilities, mental health. So these are all things, and I know the police often deal with people that are mentally ill. So anyway, I'm going to stop because this is really supposed to be about Summer Fishtrap.
It's all right. It's all right. It's all
I'm really looking forward to being part of it this summer. So,
well, and we are still taking registration. So, that's the other thing. Since you don't have to book travel, feel free to do that. There's going to be, we will, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be posting a list of events and things that are going to be available and open to the public. So it's going to be there. Spread the word.
Okay.
And join in, because I think it's going to be a learning curve for all of us, but I think it's going to be a good experience. So like I said, we're trying to take the best of what we've done and turn it into a virtual experience and make it a good one. So stay tuned.
Well, so before we take off here, just a couple of items. Number one, the Josephy Center, we did this whole virtual exhibit last month, on a historical exhibit on the early social media of Wallowa County. That's up on our website, and it's now available in a book form, which is really cool. And so we're going to be opening our front doors, but we will be restricted. We'll probably have face masks, but we're going to have a new exhibit. So we're going to be crossing that line, Shannon, that you're talking about.
Right.
No more than 10 people in here at a time or something like that. The other thing I want to get in is that, because I'm sitting here and amidst all of this stuff about the Nez Perce and other Indian concerns, is that all too often in the Black Lives Matter thing, the relationship between Blacks and Indians is very, very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a long history, and I don't want to go into that, but all too often the Indians get forgotten. We are reading now a little bit about the Navajo. I don't know if you've seen, but the Yakima Reservation is being really hit hard right now.
Yeah.
And they're in our backyard. But we get all this other stuff. And as Josephy pointed out years ago, that the Indians get skipped over in our textbooks, and they don't have as many people as Black people. An Indian is just as likely percentage-wise to, whatever it is, 3-to-1 over whites to get killed by a cop. The Indian women are raped and killed in higher numbers than any other ethnic group in the United States. So Indians are in our backyard, and it's kind of our country and their country. And so I think that's another thing that one of the reasons we read Beth Piatos, and you had her last summer.
She's back this year. Yeah.
She's back, but having a Nez Perce voice here, I think is very important as we go forward to what you said earlier, Shannon, listening to the people around us. But the people around us, for me, and I've lived here 50 years come July, but increasingly it means listening not only to the people who actually live here, but the people who also call this place home.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, keep challenging us to do better. I think we're ready to do that. Together, I think we are. So
why don't how do people get you on the Facebook, or go to your webpage or go to Facebook?
Go to our website, go to fishtrap.org, and you can find all about Summer Fishtrap. You can also email us at info@fishtrap.org, or me personally, Shannon at fishtrap.org. You can get me. And we're happy to help you out. And again, really, if you have ideas for programming, if you have people that you think should have been part, or that would be interested in this conversation, to share it. And we really are. We were talking today. It's almost like we're in a situation where we get to cherry pick. This is how my brain is working now. We get to cherry pick the best of what Fishtrap has done in the past, and then look at what the needs of our community and our world are now. And let's see where we go next. Let's see what we do together. Because I think the positive in this for me is that we get a chance. It's almost like a restart button, both as an organization, but also as a community. How do we do better going forward? How do we learn from this and build something pretty great? And it's more fun to do together. So let's see what we can do.
Hey, I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
This is Mary Kay. I missed Elizabeth. What was the name of the book that you're delivering to the schools they'll be reading next fall?
It's in the heart of the sea.
In the heart
of the sea. And I did see a copy at the book loft just on Saturday, so I know it's there.
Okay,
I bought the last used copy myself, but that is the book, and we'll make a big splash announcement about that here probably in a couple of weeks. So
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And the subtitle is The True Story of the Whale Ship Essex.
Okay, thank you.
Expanded reading list, Mary Kay. But
I have a lot of catching up to do.
Okay. But I highly recommend The Night Watchman.
Yeah.
And join us. We're going to have a virtual meeting on June 30th for that book. Okay. Thank
Well,
you all
so
very much for coming.
yeah, thanks for inviting us. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks, Shannon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.